Welcome to the Right Tack, where we help private practice owners face the headwinds of the healthcare industry. I'm Paul Jonas, CEO and co-founder of Breezy Billing and Phoenix Credentialing.
And I'm Jim Jonas, therapist, co-founder of Breezy Billing, Phoenix Credentialing, and the Jonas Center.
And today we are joined by Nils Snyder, partner at Kenwood Commercial and a seasoned real estate professional who has helped many businesses, including behavioral health practices, navigate the decision of renting versus buying office space. This is part 2 of our 2-part series on finding space for your private practice.
We'll dig into when it makes sense to lease versus buy, key financial operational considerations, and how real estate can be used as a strategic tool for your business. All right, let's dive in. Nils, can you talk a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, no problem. I am a 25-year veteran of commercial real estate. I started my practice in 1999. Straight out of college, I got in with a company called Welsh Companies, which morphed into Colliers. And in 2019, 2 business partners and I decided to pull the ripcord, and we jumped off and formed Kenwood Commercial. Kenwood Commercial, our primary focus was helping local owners and local users of real estate focus on their real estate. I'd spent most of my career working for large institutional and national players, and really found that the joy I found in doing the work was really when I was helping people that are in our market, where we could have a connection and really provide true benefits to them as they're working with their companies and creating great spaces for them.
Can I just comment?
Sure.
So we've just met today, and it's so interesting. All of our guests are really, they like they're independents,
Mm-hmm.
and large corporations, they've either experienced it and then gotten out or whatever. So that's great. I just wanted to, bring that up. So,
well, there's something fun about being on your own.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people ask me, is it better one side or the other? And my comment has been, the grass is greener on either side of the fence. You just don't know what kind of weeds are in the lawn. There's certain challenges being on my own that's much different than being with the big corporation. But at the same time, some of those things that you thought you were getting with the big corporation, you don't really get. And so it's a trade-off. But I have really enjoyed having my own practice. And, while even at Colliers and Welsh, we were truly kind of independent business owners underneath the big umbrella. It's just you had to play by their rule books. They kind of were looking at you as production and how could you get how many deals done, and where's your revenue. Being on our own, we get to focus more in on the individuals and work the projects that we really want to work on, even if they're not as quote profitable, but they're more fulfilling.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Well, we got connected through our friend Tony, which Tony actually helped us start this company when I think we had a computer on a cardboard box, or at least a really bad desk in some kind of box.
You did have a window, though.
I had a window at that time. Yep, I've graduated to no windows now. But
remember, revenue production is on the window. Non-revenue production is in the interior.
Oh, okay. Great.
We're doing it right now.
We do fondly refer to this as the windowless universal headquarters of Breezy Notes. So
we do. Yeah. Well, it's in the middle of the Jonas Center. And so they get all the windows for the therapists and the clients get the windows, and we just kind of sweat it out in here.
Right.
I think so. You've got, speaking of sweating it out, you have a magnet that you use to manage the temperature, because there's two
magnet.
Yeah. Don't you have a magnet on one of the air vents or something?
God. Oh yeah. Magnetized thing for the vent.
Yeah.
That you can put on the air vent and, make it.
People are realizing we work in a hovel, I think.
That's it.
No, it's much nicer.
I need to get you an HVAC guy, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah, that'd be nice. It's warm in the morning and cold in the afternoon, no matter what.
Well, Nels, we usually kick this thing off with a little question we ask everybody, and it's what are you doing this weekend? So for the folks listening, for the folks watching, what you got going on this weekend?
So I am a huge state fair guy, and the Minnesota State Fair starts on Thursday, and I will more than likely be at the state fair. The state fair is a 12-day event. I will likely be at the fair between 10 to 11 days total, and I will definitely be at the fair Friday night for dinner, Saturday afternoon, evening for dinner, and Sunday night afternoon for dinner as well.
Oh man!
Oh my gosh!
We have a few folks on staff.
Some people might say this is crazy, by the way, and you might have a few of your listeners calling in saying, "I need to help this poor soul." So give me his name and number so we can give him therapy.
Right.
But
so what is it that you like? What is it? Yeah, tell us more.
So number one, food. I love the food. I love fair food, and I also love the people watching. Like, you can see all of humanity come through the state fair. Short, tall, skinny, fat, rich, poor, everything. You see all of Minnesota walk by. And I love to see what they wear, the foot choice, the shoe choice that they wear when they're going to the state fair, because you can always tell when someone's on a date because they've got high heels on. You can tell the family, you're looking for the mom or dad that's just beyond, you can just tell they're done, but their kids are still going strong.
Right.
And I love the food. Cheese curds, Pronto Pups, Great Mancini sandwich. I'm both. I love a Pronto Pup because it's sweet, but I love the corn dog because it's got a little bit more of a grit.
Okay, and for our outside of Minnesota listeners, like the state fair in Minnesota, it's one of the biggest in the country, if not like the top two or something. Is that Nels?
Yes. So Texas always claims number one, but Texas. I'm sorry, I'm gonna call out anyone that's from Texas. I'm gonna call you out and say you cheat because you go for like 2 months. We do our state fair in 12 days, and we get the same number, if not more, people showing up. And Texas, because I got a chance to go down to the Texas State Fair last year, I think we went.
Okay.
They've got a car show going on at the same time.
Oh, that doesn't even.
So they're kind of double dipping. They're totally double dipping.
Yeah. Oh man.
And I would challenge anyone to come eat at the Minnesota State Fair and then go eat at the Texas State Fair, and they would be like, "Yeah, the Minnesota State Fair food is way better."
Oh, awesome! All right, so it's a challenge, Texas. Bring it on.
I'm ready. I'm ready to. I've got to become governor somehow and challenge the governor of Texas to come on up and spend the day.
Oh, it's good. It's good to dream. I think you can do it, and we will have.
I don't know if I'd want to do it.
Well, your contact information is all around here, so you're out there. It's public.
Great.
Oh man. Well, wow. Thanks. We have a huddle every like twice a week, and the exact same things that you said. It was the food, the people watching, and the shoes. Literally, those were the three main things that the team talked about the state fair last week. It was it's wild how closely you paralleled that.
Yeah, it is. It's just so much fun to be there too. And I will say, I enjoy going into the exhibits. I love seeing it, even though most of it's the same year after year. It's still kind of just fun to be there, and kind of just be part of it all. And it is only 12 days, so it's fun. It's fast. I've got, I think, 48 state fair tickets already bought. So, because we're going to do our, Kenwood does the day at the state fair. So we bring our whole staff over on Thursday this week. And then literally I will be there with friends, family, whoever wants to show up. I'll be like, I got a ticket for you. Let's go on over and have lunch,
That's
dinner.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
shoot, we won't be at the state fair this
No,
weekend.
we won't. We've got a project.
What do you guys got planned?
We got a lot of fun planned. Actually, it's
Yeah.
a Jonas Farm Day. My sister's getting married in a month, almost exactly.
The end of September, yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So they're the reception is going to be out at the farm, and so we got my folks have a 10-acre hobby farm, and
Yeah.
And
a big barn.
a big barn, big shed.
Yeah.
And do you want to tell them what we're doing?
Well, so we volunteered to build an arbor for her, for the like where the ceremony will be, and so we did that, and then Paul had the great idea of, well, let's just use the wood that's around the farm. Okay, so we're not going to buy any wood. I've got plenty of screws. I was going to tell you that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, got plenty of screws. So
we're going to need a lot of them, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll cut it and make it creative. We got some plywood, and 2x4s and stuff.
Yeah, in the shed there's just a pile of every kind of wood you could want, except they're all just a little short. And
that's great.
Too long.
That's great.
Yeah. So it's going to be quite the little project for us to do. But that's
I should send my son over to help you because he's done at college, but he did his Eagle project. He built an arbor for our church to enter the kind of like the garden area.
Yeah.
So I should send him down to help you out.
Oh, that's going to be way nicer than our arbor. Have him bring some wood too.
Right.
Just a little more dimensional lumber. Oh man. That's cool.
Eagle Scout. Eagle Scout. We have an Eagle Scout here.
Oh
yeah. There he is.
That was a lot of fun a long time ago. We got to coordinate the volunteer effort to build a park or build a playground.
Oh, cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Except the truck came 4 hours late, so it was really just parents keeping their kids entertained for 4 hours, and then every adult with the drill just went to town getting it all put together, and everyone ended up doing it. We got it done, which was really cool.
Yeah.
That's fun. That's really cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we're not here to talk about the fair or arbors, but
okay,
we are here to talk a little bit about commercial real estate, about finding an office or a location for providers to call home.
Yeah. So we should probably get started with that.
I guess so.
Okay. Now, tell us about renting versus buying.
Yeah. Set the stage.
What your thoughts are. Yeah.
Well, I think I'd set the stage first with just a very high level market update. Ever since COVID hit, we've had a definite shift in the use of office space. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of your therapists are thinking about how they're using their office space and virtual, especially, telehealth and such things like that. But the office market has definitely taken a strong beating, to be blunt. Probably pre-COVID, we were in a very steady and sound market. For owners, they were very thankful. The rates were rising. There was new construction being talked about. We had lots of activity. Post-COVID, we've definitely seen a reduction in rates. We've seen an increase in construction expenses. We've seen definitely a shying away from new construction. And, our inventory is still definitely strong, and definitely deals to be had out there when you're looking in the right spots. Now, that doesn't mean that every building is in the same situation. Some buildings are definitely more better off than other buildings. The thing I tell a lot of people is it's like a Charles Dickens novel. It's a tale of two cities, and not to say this between Minneapolis and St. Paul, but more as a tale of two cities between two different office buildings. Really? Some buildings might be doing really well, and two doors down, they're not doing as well at all. It could be because the owner isn't as aggressive. It could be because the amenities aren't as strong. It could be because the parking isn't there. It's just become a very bifurcated market. And because of that, we're seeing different deals and different transactions taking place.
And so yeah, so is it the amenities, I don't know, everything you just said, how can you, if you're looking for office space, how do you sniff that out, or what could you recommend for folks looking, that are entering this landscape that you just described?
So, number one, I do recommend using a broker, and that's self-serving. I am a broker, and not saying that you come use me. If you have a friend, with that caveat, though, I would say use a commercial real estate broker. Do not use your friend that's a residential real estate guy. It's a totally different industry. It's a totally different process, and you need someone to help you navigate through that process. You know, I would also tell you that the process is slow. It's not like you're going to look at an apartment that you're moving into tomorrow, or you're looking at a house that you're going to buy in 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very slow process. You've got to figure out if the space works. You've got to figure out what the build out costs are, what needs to be done to the space. Are you meeting compliance with code, with zoning? Are the rents in line with market? Are the rents in line with your budget? There's just a lot more to it, and a professional can help navigate you through that process much more efficiently and beneficially, both from an economic standpoint, but also from just knowing the process. Most commercial real estate buildings are represented by brokers, and they're being paid a fee regardless of if you use a tenant representative or not. So you're better off having someone on your side of the ledger that's helping you guide you than trying to do it all on your own.
Okay, so kind of invest a little up front for a long-term benefit or payout over the course of your
Well,
lease.
and just so you know, most building owners are paying those fees for the tenant rep brokers. So our market is very similar to if you're buying a house.
Okay.
The fees are baked into the situation. The building owner is going to be more than likely paying that fee to your tenant representative.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good
Well,
for folks to know.
so, and are you talking about? It sounds like you're talking about renting. I mean,
Yes,
okay,
and sales, and in the sales market too. So if you're buying a building, your tenant rep broker, your buyer, as a buyer's agent, in your letter of intent, you're going to specify that agent is getting paid X for the transaction.
okay,
Most of the time, the seller is coming back and agreeing to that. They might adjust it a bit, but they're agreeing to that payment.
okay.
All right.
Well, good. Huh.
So yes,
Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. Got a few questions here.
So, from your perspective, Nels, the biggest difference between renting and buying, from like a business strategy wise, what are your thoughts on that?
So number one, I would say is flexibility. Renting, you're going to get a whole lot more flexibility. So you're going to sign a 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 7 year lease term. Once you buy, you're locking yourself in now to a sales process to buy the property, but also to exit from the property. And unlike the residential market, where you see prices drop very dramatically, very quickly, commercial, you usually don't do that. I had a person ask me about this just the other day. They're like, why is it that, residential, you see the prices drop so quickly, and commercial, you see the prices hold for so long? And my comment to them was, let's say you're in a room with 100 people. 100 of those people need a house. They need, a place to live. And because of that, the market is speaking very rapidly on what they feel that house is worth. When it comes to buying a commercial property or renting a commercial property, of that 100 people, you're maybe dealing with 5 to 10 of those people are going to actually look at your commercial properties, because most people are, employees, not employers.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, our market is much more narrow. And so we don't have as many people in the market at any given time. So a lot of owners and purveyors of commercial real estate will hold tighter on their pricing because they know that they have a sales cycle that is going to be 6, 12, 18 months long, and they're not ready to give it up right away. Like, our lack of activity does not mean lack of value. It just means there's no one in the market at that given time looking for that specific property.
Okay.
Okay.
And so for
But as I say, I think the biggest thing that you have to consider with buying versus leasing, number one is, how long are you going to be in the property?
Okay.
Are you going to grow out of that property? Do you see yourself needing more space within 2 or 3 years because you're going to add 3 or 4 or 5 new therapists, to your company? Or are you going to be, what you are today for the next 10 years? Then buying has a different implication than renting will have.
right.
The other thing with buying is you're responsible. When the roof goes out, guess who's getting the bill?
Right.
When the heater goes out, guess who's getting the bill? Depending on how you've set things up, when it snows 20 inches, and if you're the guy that's shoveling your sidewalk in front of your small office, you're going out to shovel it. You're not showing up at 8 o'clock and expecting the snow to be shoveled and walking in on a clean building. So
Right.
it adds a different level of complexity, and you are now wearing two hats as an owner. You're wearing the hat of the tenant because you're still a purveyor of the space, but you're also wearing the hat of the owner, which means you've got all the benefits and the risks that go along with it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
And that's really what this whole conversation is about, is the benefits and the risks of, kind of that independence a little bit, that you get. So,
I've with the Jonah Center, I both rent and I own, and it's like, it's really nice paying myself rent, okay, or having the Jonah Center pay me rent. But yes, the clogged toilet or whatever it is, I'm the guy they call,
yep.
to fix it.
Yes.
With the
Well,
ownership.
and there is also a situation where you have to determine, given the size of your company, the size of your practice, how many extra people do you have working for you? Are you 2 or 3 practitioners that have come together, but you don't have anyone else helping, like a receptionist or an office manager? Because if it's only you and you're dealing with a building, you have a different responsibility that comes into play. Where if you're large enough and, let's say you have a staff and you can, delegate some of those kind of items to someone else, be like, hey, if the toilet's clogged, John, can you please call the plumber and get out, have someone come out and take care of it? Versus if you don't have a John and you're waiting for that, you're like, oh, I've got to go solve this, and I've taken my plunger, I can't solve it. I've got to find someone else who can come. You've got people waiting for the bathroom. You've got, there just becomes compounding issues that you have to know you're going to address and take care of. Now, there's also the benefit of you're paying down your mortgage. You're creating your savings in reverse. Did you guys ever hear the famous Ray Kroc story? Ray Kroc was at some university. I think he was like University of Nebraska. And, he's standing up in front, he's McDonald's, right? And he says to the group, does anyone know what my core business is? And everyone laughs and chuckles. And he goes, no, does anyone know what my core business is? And one guy in the back goes, you sell hamburgers. And Ray Kroc goes, no, I'm a real estate investor. My hamburgers pay for my real estate. So, Ray Kroc realized he could leverage his business to buy the best corners in all of America and the world to
Oh,
sell hamburgers, but his real goal was owning the real estate.
oh, interesting. I'd not heard that
Yeah.
story. Okay.
So and real estate is a phenomenal way to build wealth.
Yeah.
And it can be generational wealth. You can have someone, you know, and I'm not sure, how the Jonas Center works if you have extra space within your building where you lease it out to someone else, or if you're 100% just your center. But like, if you do it right and you buy a little bit of a larger building, you provide yourself growth, you provide yourself some flexibility, but now you've also got a landlord hat on, so you're leasing to space. You've got tenants that you've got to answer to and be aware of. You can't leave the snow to be shoveled by someone else because you've got to get it taken care of. You can't not have the toilet work and be like, oh, we'll deal with it later. It becomes a different situation. And so there's just different stresses with owning versus renting, but it's not always a panacea on both sides.
Mhm.
I always tell people the grass is green on both sides. It just depends on what kind of weeds you want to deal with.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So what are some milestones that like business sizes, like where you'd usually recommend one over the other from the buying or renting? Like where if I'm a provider and I'm making 100,000 a year, between me and probably one other person or two other people, um, what are some of the breakdowns, or could you break it down for us? Like,
Yeah, I don't think it doesn't necessarily break down based on like what you're making on income. I think it breaks down more on what you want your business to do. So
okay.
you want to use real estate as a tool to help drive your business, and not your you can use your real estate your business as a tool to grow your real estate, but you should also be using your business as a tool to grow your real estate, but your real estate as a tool to grow your business. So with that, what I mean by that is, if you're, let's say you two have started your own practice together, you each have your own office, you're running your independent, but you really want to grow and have 7 or 10 more therapists underneath you and grow to be a larger practice where you own it and you've got the therapist working for you.
Hmm.
That's a completely different model than being in a situation where, hey, we're two therapists, we run this business together, we know we're going to be steady, we don't need any more people. The biggest question I always ask people is, what is your growth plan? Because if you don't know your growth plan, I really can't help you with your real estate plan.
Hmm.
Because
Okay.
again, it gets back to flexibility.
Right.
If you know that you don't want to be more than 2 or 3 people, that's phenomenal. That's great. You know what you want. If you think, I really want to become Nystrom, right? Like they're a huge purveyor of mental health services, right?
Hmm.
Got a
They
lot
have
of
multiple offices across the city, right? Like their their needs are much different than you know a 2 person or a 1 person firm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
So
absolutely.
you have to realize where you're at in the process and understand what you're looking for and what you really want to be.
And it's so it's a little takes a little soul searching. Like it's not just an address, but it's also
Yes.
plan. And you're saying providers should ask themselves these questions, especially if they're thinking about getting into real estate where they're actually taking ownership of the space.
Yeah. Well, and I helped a single sole practitioner um, with their space, and they needed 300 square feet. It was a small office space, right?
Hmm.
There's not a lot of options out there for the small single provider, model, because commercial real estate buildings are built not with 300 square foot tenants in mind. They're built with
Right.
30,000 square foot tenants in
Yep.
mind.
Okay.
So when you think about, what we reference in our industry quite a bit is bay depth, meaning, from the corridor to the window. Most of the time that bay depth is anywhere from 20 to 40 feet.
Okay.
You get a lot of interior space in a
Yep.
very narrow, think about 20 feet by 40 is 800 square feet. 20 feet wide, you're maybe getting 2 private offices at 10 feet wide, but you're also getting a lot of interior space that you're not necessarily needing, because how big of a waiting room do you need if you're 2 people?
Right.
Right.
Probably not seating for 15.
Yep.
Yep. That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
So it kind of, plays around what you're looking for. But, at the same time, there's like office condos, that are sometimes a really good opportunity for people to look at that are, you know, not as large of a commercial real estate footprint. So, I want to buy a 800 or a 1200 or a 1500 square foot office condo. I'm going to have 2, 3 private offices in it.
Mm-hmm.
Those usually work out really well, especially if you know that you're going to be that size for a pretty good chunk of time.
Okay.
If you're looking at growth again, being in that office condo is probably the worst decision you can make,
Okay.
because it's going to be, a little bit harder to sell. It's not as easy to sell as a standalone building. And, to be very blunt, there's not a lot of 500 to 1,000 square foot office buildings out there in the market.
Right. Economies of scale.
They're
Going bigger.
there's just not a lot of small buildings. So, what sometimes can happen, and one thing that, is interesting, we did this, early in my career quite a bit. We would work with medical practitioners, both, mental health, you know, pediatrics, dental, all of it kind of across the board. And we'd create partnerships. And so we'd be like, hey, you're going to buy into a building. You're going to be 20% of a 25,000 square foot building. You're going to be part of this. You're going to have your space. You're going to be an owner, but you're going to be a renter. You're going to get the benefits of ownership because you're going to pay rent, but you're also going to mitigate some of those downside risks and the rewards by sharing it across the board with maybe 5 other owners. And you've, created a kind of a situation where you've got multiple people owning the building with you. Partnerships aren't easy. So you got to know that partnerships have different issues to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But get you into that ownership stake while also paying rent. Because as a guy that makes his living on renting and selling real estate, we bought our office. I hated the idea of paying someone else rent.
Okay. Yeah.
That's where my head goes usually.
Yep. Yep.
But at the same time, when we started Kenwood, we started in WeWork, because it was easy, it was quick, it was efficient. We paid a lot of money for the rent on a per square foot, value, but it worked really well for what we needed, and it was flexible. Our second location was a similar co-working situation in a different building where we just negotiated a different deal. We rented our third office, and then our fourth one we bought.
Okay. Okay. So it was a
But
little.
part of it's a little bit of a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, well, I remember renting my first office space and the anxiety that created in me. Back then it's like, oh my, it was everything. Can I do this? Will I pay the bills and all that kind of stuff? And that was just renting. And so, yeah, I've come quite a ways in developing some of that ownership, and then I'm still renting one space too. So, yeah.
But I think you just you really, Jim, you just really hit on a key item. That anxiety on that first rental situation, because you don't know if you're going to be successful. Like,
Yeah.
will people show up, right? Like,
Right.
will people want my service, right? You're taking this big leap of faith, and you're jumping out the door, and you're like, okay, I'm hoping this is going to work.
Right.
But and that's where I think renting at first just makes so much sense, because
Okay.
Okay.
you're limiting your you're limiting your upside, but you're limiting your downside risk, right? Like, I'm signing a 1-year lease. My rent is $1,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
I'm signing for $12,000. If I don't make it and the landlord makes me pay all of it, I'm $12,000.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't just buy a $250,000 building and, oh boy, I'm on the hook for the taxes. I'm on the hook for the insurance. I've got to maintain it. I've got to run it. I've got to take care of it. And no one's showing up on top of it. And my significant other is looking at me going, oh my goodness, our savings is going out the door. What did you just do to me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay.
That
Yeah.
You
That-
know,
that
but
sounds
you get going. You get going in that first space that you thought, oh, how am I going to pay $1,000 a month on? All of a sudden, you're a year in, and you're like, wow, I'm doing pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I made my rent, I made my salary, I made my expenses. I did better than I thought I was going to do, and I really want to add one more private office because I've got my buddy Paul that wants to become a therapist with me, and we're going to add him in, and he's going to be an employee with me, and I'm going to make money, leveraging his time and resources.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm going to add a little bit to my office. Oh, I'm at maybe $2,000 a month, but heck, Paul's bringing me in this much more, so I'm actually getting ahead. And then all of a sudden, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, it's like, what? I'm at a point where I want my own space. I want to buy, a small office building. I'm actually working with a therapy group right now that's their exact situation. They've been running a very successful, therapy practice for the last 10, 12 years. They've been paying rent. And, she and her husband came in and they're like, how do we buy a building? We're paying this much in rent every month. How can we transform this into equity?
Yeah.
And where can we find a building to buy?
It's kind of like the proof of concept, right? Is what it sounds like. If you're not sure, if you're just getting into it in the first place, and there's you want to minimize your risk as much as possible if you're not sure, and then you prove that concept over time.
Yes.
When you're making that revenue or partnering or bringing in enough where you can start having the conversation that you just talked about, where we're there's 10 providers, we're paying 10,000 a month in rent and maybe 2-3 locations. How do we bring this together and get that equity out of it?
Well, and the beauty is this too. Like, everyone always thinks they have to do it on their own, right? Like, I got to own the building myself.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of opportunity, especially if not saying that you have to merge your individual practices, right? But if you have 5 friends that are in, running their own individual therapy practices together, that's now 5 offices, right? Maybe what you need is a 2,500 square foot building so you can have a break room, your bathrooms, your common lobby, and your individual offices. But hey, let's each own 20% of the building, because now when the roof goes and it costs $50,000 to replace, I'm only on the hook for 20%. So I'm only writing a check for 10 grand.
Yeah.
Versus $50,000, which is not a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd rather write that.
And you can still charge, rent, right? Kind of, Jim, to your point, like, you can charge the rent as the tenant in the space and create equity for you as the owner to
Mm-hmm.
pay down the mortgage, to pay off the building, to make them, the monthly kind of dividend.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've also got 4 other people with you to help you navigate that both the good and the bad. And just know, you might have one of the bads as one of your partners might not pay the rent that month because their practice isn't going as strong as your practice.
Yep.
Yep. That could happen. Yeah.
And then you've got to deal with that and how to get rid of that partner.
Right.
So there's
Was that a risk?
yeah, there's always risk, and it's just how do you mitigate the risk? You know, how do you see that the grass is green, but also see some of the weeds that you've got to deal with?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, Nels, we've just talking about two things I'm hearing about renting, and just wondering if you have anything more to add or with what you've already said. But the it's less risk to rent than to own. Especially in the beginning, uh, and the flexibility. If you are growing, it gives you a lot more flexibility than owning. So I'm hearing those two big points from you. Anything
Yeah,
else?
that's no, I think that's right. That's spot on. You know, you're the benefit of renting is you don't have to worry about a lot of the maintenance and repair type
Right.
issues. You get to show up and use, right? You know, now it does give you flexibility because if the space isn't working for you for any reason, right? You know, your lease term is rolling in 6 months. You know, your landlord is going to come to you and say, "Hey, we really want to talk to you about renewing." Let's say the space is too small. Let's say the space is too big. Let's say the space doesn't have enough windows. Let's say the space has no windows and you're really at the point where it's like, I want a window. I'm moving for a window. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it could be the taxes are too high. You feel like the neighborhood has changed and isn't as safe. You might have a situation where, you know, not to pick on Minneapolis in this moment, but Minneapolis has taken away a lot of street parking. You know, they put in a lot of bike lanes and bus thoroughfares in Uptown.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't want to be there anymore because of it, because,
Mhm.
now your clients can't get to you. So, you know what, I need to make that move where if you had purchased the building, you can still move. It's just a whole different process
Mm-hmm.
of going through a sale than it is to go through my lease is up, Mr. Landlord. Thank you very much for the time. It's been a pleasure. I'm moving to St. Louis Park, or I'm moving to farther south Minneapolis, or
Right.
I'm moving to St. Paul or Richfield. Or it could even be a situation where you found that most all of your clients are coming from Plymouth and they're complaining about driving to Richfield. Even though you live in Richfield, you might make the choice to be like, you know what, I'm going to go move my practice to Golden Valley because it's going to be closer for my patients to come to.
Mhm.
And I might get more patients because they'll refer more people over to me.
Find out
Yeah.
you're a
Yeah.
Plymouth person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh.
so it sounds like there's kind of a tipping point then, especially if you're not sure what you're getting into with your, as a business person. So, you might already have the therapist hat, the business person, but if you don't know what you want yet, then renting is definitely the way to go. And so then you change it's
Yes.
the equity, the flexibility, or sorry, it's the flexibility kind of in exchange for the equity side of the equation.
Yeah.
So get yourself set up, get yourself moving, and then then you'll know what you want when you want it. Then you can go out and find that perfect space to buy when it's assuming you're of a size and it's about the right time.
Yes. And again, the one of the best benefits of real estate is that opportunity to buy, pay yourself rent because you're going to charge yourself as a tenant more than your mortgage because you're going to write that off. Talk with your tax accountant to make sure you're doing it correctly. But you're going to create equity in the back end so that when you do retire from private practice in 20, 30, years, you've got another asset that
40,
you can
20,
40
30,
years.
5 maybe.
I don't know. I was trying to be optimistic there.
Thank you. Thank you, Nels.
You're having too much fun.
Great. Oh, shoot.
Well, I know that the insurance providers love to pay big checks.
Yes, they
Oh,
love
yeah.
that.
Yeah. Right.
Oh.
Oh, shoot. Oh,
Well, so
but like thinking about real estate though, like as a means for like wealth creation,
yeah,
it is a great way to leverage your business to pay for an asset that you can either a sell because like many people, people sell their practice when they're done, right? Like they bring on a new therapist, you kind of transition, over to the new person. Hopefully the clientele stays and doesn't, drift away, right? If you can also sell the building as part of that, or the space as part of that, now you just upped your own value. And even if that new purveyor doesn't want, your space, but just wants to buy your book, you still got an asset that you can sell to somebody else down the road, and you paid for it via the revenue that you've been generating. And rent is deductible. You're going to write your rent off. You're going to depreciate your real estate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit. Can we talk about leases a little bit as we, I don't know, as providers have a big bunch of paper in front of them. They're hopefully working with the broker. But what are some of the details of the lease agreements that could affect their practice long term?
Number one, always, always, always hire an attorney to review your lease. Most leases are not 2 pages long. They're usually 15 to 20, if not even 30 pages long. Have an attorney review the lease, because you just want to know the good, the bad, and the ugly. I always tell people, the rent is one portion of the lease. The rest is all the details that are sitting within that document that you don't necessarily know about. You want to make sure you're thinking about your renewal rights, because once you set up your practice and people are used to coming to a certain spot, you don't want to get kicked out because the guy next to you needs space and now you're all of a sudden out on the street. So you want to think about renewal rights. You want to think about, you want to review what's called the common area maintenance charges, or the operating charges, so you can understand, hey, what's being charged through and what's not being charged through. Who's responsible for cleaning, who's not responsible for cleaning. You want to think about what happens if I don't sign a new lease. That's called holdover. Holdover is an expense that you can be charged, sometimes up to 200% of your rent if you don't sign a new lease. So knowing where you're at and how that works, there's little pitfalls that can catch you if you're not thinking through a lot of the details, as you're reviewing the document. Thinking through parking, thinking through access to common area amenities, thinking through, access and quiet enjoyment, and what happens if the group, you're sitting in a very quiet building today, but the owner decides to put a weightlifting, boxing gym below you. And all of a sudden, all you hear every day is AC/DC and, punching bags being hit. I don't know. I don't know if that's very conducive to therapy.
Yeah. Something like that happened to a customer of ours. They put in a chiropractor right above her, and they got those tables that they work you on.
Yeah.
And so it was like every 10 minutes, 20 minutes, ka-chunk. And so they ended up, I think they ended up moving her, or letting her move into a different part of the building or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, it's being very aware of those things, because a lot of times leases aren't written with that in mind. So it's trying to understand how, you can best, kind of mitigate some of those risks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So it gets back to having a lawyer go through that.
Have a lawyer.
That's what
get
I'm
a broker,
hearing.
get a lawyer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Pay the money up front. Yeah.
Anybody else?
The other thing you're going to need ultimately in your advisor category, architect, contractor. So a good broker will help help not only negotiate your lease, but also help guide you with an architect. Again, using a commercial architect, not a residential architect. Commercial contractor, not a residential contractor. And a lot of buildings won't even allow a residential contractor into their building, because the rules are just different. The building materials are different. So you want that, the broker, you want your architect, you want your contractor, you need your attorney, and as always, you should have your accountant. And don't forget your insurance guy, because they should look over the insurance provisions of the lease to make sure that you're in compliance with your insurance.
Right. Right.
That's a lot
Yeah.
of people,
Yeah. Huh.
but important
Well,
too.
it's different, right? It's, a lot of people think real estate's like, it's like your house. And it's just a different, you're doing business in this space. You've got to be aware of the space. You've got to be aware of what you're doing with the space. And you need the right professionals to guide you through the business aspect of the transaction, because it's a lot of money.
Mhm.
You know, Jim, I think you said it right. You were nervous that first time, right? You like, oh my goodness, what did I just sign up for?
Right.
You want to take away that anxiety. You don't want to be nervous. You want to go into it going, I'm excited. I did my due diligence. I kicked all the tires. I looked at the different spaces I could find that would fit my needs. I negotiated, the rates and the terms, and I got the best deal that I think I can get. We did the review of the build out. We worked with contractors to figure out the right pricing. We had the attorney review the lease to make sure there was no hidden, gotchas. And, I'm signing up and I'm ready to go to work. I'm excited to show up every day, for however long that lease term is, and potential renewals afterwards, to be like, this is really exciting. I'm here ready to work.
Right. And to do what you're passionate about is what I would throw in there as a therapist. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and, a lot of therapy, I can tell you this much. I would not be good at therapy. I'm good at real estate, but I'm not good at therapy. Right? Like, and know that most business owners, they're good at their specific item that they're doing, be it therapy, making a widget, running a law practice, doing dental work. They aren't, no one person is a master of all disciplines.
right.
And usually, the biggest issues that we see is that, the person that decided to do it on their own, and then we're reviewing something 3 or 4 or 5 years later, and they're like, hey, we need help. And you're like, who did this? Well, I did it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh my goodness, like,
Oh, boy.
you didn't have an attorney look at this at all. No, I read it. I thought it sounded fine. All right, well, here's this, here's this, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, what do you mean my rents are 20% above market? Well, you signed a lease that's 20% above market. Well, I found it, and the rent worked for me, and I thought it would be a great deal. And okay, well, you could have gotten free rent. You could have gotten more of a build-out allowance. You could have gotten moving allowances. You could have gotten free parking. You could have gotten all these different things that you didn't ask for.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
That sounds a lot like the conversation we have with providers when we talk about credentialing and contracting. For someone who's starting a new practice, so we do, the core of Breezy Billing is the billing part of it. But before that, you got to get all set up with the insurance companies and everything, get your license reviewed and approved. And the number of times we have people come to us with billing issues, and when you dig past it, and now we've gotten really good at asking all these questions up front, but you dig past and you're like, oh, well, your contracts are a mess. You still have the address on there from 2 offices ago. And now, the insurance companies, the healthcare industry, everyone is looking at everything with a fine, under the microscope right now. And so anybody who has these underlying issues that could stem from 10 years ago, even when they first started off, they don't, that comes home to roost now.
Yes.
They, you kind of made your bed 10 years ago, and unfortunately the rules have changed. People are looking at things. So now you gotta deal with changing things, and the insurance industry, healthcare insurance, moves at probably the same pace as the commercial real estate industry too. Like everything's measured in months in our year. So you want to make sure you get ahead of that, and you want to plan for taking 6 months or even longer for new contracts or other things like that. So you're preaching to the choir.
Well, and I would tell you, most, like, think about just that timeline. Like, you're talking about, how you need contracts and insurance review for 6 months. just know that your commercial real estate, we tell people to budget a year.
Yeah.
Just because by the time you get through the process, you look at real estate, you get proposals back for real estate, you get, pricing back on the construction drawings or the planning, and you get through the lease, you'd rather have a little more time than no time.
Yeah.
So plan accordingly. And now, sometimes, a smaller office can go relatively quicker.
Okay.
If you're only looking for 1,500 square feet, 6 to 9 months can work. But what I tell everyone is, on average, budget 60 days for construction, just construction. Okay. So if you want to be in a space on, let's use September 1st, your construction should have started July 1st. Which means you need construction drawings done by June 1st to get a permit. And depending on which city you're in, Minneapolis is really good. You can probably get a permit within a week. Some cities can take 4 to 6 weeks just to get a permit. So, get the permit situation figured out, know which city you're in, how long it's going to take to get the permit. So now you got to back your construction date to your permit date to your, and to get a permit, you need construction drawings, minimum 2 weeks for construction drawings, with any architect, just to give them enough time to do it right.
Yep.
Before that, you got to get into your lease, which means you really need to get all your terms done. So budget a month to month and a half for reviewing a lease document with attorneys, because by the time you send a document over from the landlord, it's going to take a little bit of time for you and your attorney to review. Then the attorney is going to send back comments to the building's attorney. It's going to take a little bit of a time for them to review and get back to you. And then there's going to be a pushback on something that you're asking for that they don't want to do. You got to hash that all out. Now throw on front of that your proposal stage, economic stage of trying to figure out what building's got the best numbers and the best economics to make the deal work. Throw in front of that, trying to look at spaces and shortlist. So yeah, it's a process. It's not just a quick, hey guys, thanks a lot, I want an office space, and we move you in next week. It takes time.
I bet you've seen the same look on people's faces when they're gung ho. I've got my thing going, and I'm going to go start, and it's going to be January 1st, and here we are in August, and you're like, well, hold on there a minute. Where do you have all this stuff lined up? Because same thing with credentialing or starting a practice. It takes a year just to start the practice. Everything that you have to get done, depending on a few different little things. But generally, we tell people 8 months to a year. And if everything goes well, it's going to be 6 to 8 months is what we usually tell people. So we got to give that to someone.
Same.
Yeah.
Very similar. Very similar. And here's the hard thing is that when you throw purchasing in it, it gets to become even different, more different. Mm-hmm. Purchasing, you have to throw on there, okay, I've got this property under contract. Okay, I'm going to start spending money on due diligence, which, do I have a good roof? Do I have good walls? Do I have good foundation? Do I have any environmental issues? And have I done a phase 1? Do I need a phase 2? What's the survey look like? Has anyone done a survey? Yeah. All of a sudden you start throwing in all these, items that you start looking at, and all of a sudden you're starting to spend real money when you're looking at purchasing. And if anything comes back that doesn't look right, all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, am I really going to buy this building? The environmental came back with, $200,000 in asbestos removal. The building I'm buying is only, $300,000. I wasn't planning on spending $200,000 to remove asbestos.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And then the question becomes, okay, contractor, can we encapsulate the asbestos, or do we have to remove it? Well, if you're going to do this remodel, you got to do this abatement. If you change your remodel, you're going to do this abatement. There becomes all these kind of domino effect issues that kind of, one hits the other, and all of a sudden you've got a chain of events.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that.
You're making me want to rent. Yeah. However, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, Nels, I mean, those are all the factors, and it is a different mindset. I think that you have to go in business and landlord ownership wise versus, I mean, renting. You have the lawyer look at your lease, uh, but otherwise, yeah, you have all those ownership issues. But I do. What are the advantages though? I mean, besides yeah, I get to pay myself rent.
Well, your advantages are you're buying, you're ending up buying a building, right? Like, you get to be, the owner. You're going to have an asset that's going to add to your bottom line. And if it's a larger building than what you're practicing, you're renting out portion of it, you've also got another income stream coming
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
in. Now, there's risks there too. Don't go into it as, oh, it's always going to be great, but you're going to have this opportunity to create additional income from your property. There's the tax benefits of depreciation and write-offs that are different. As an owner of a commercial building,
Mhm.
you're buying a new land. If you're mowing the lawn, you're buying a lawnmower for that property. Doesn't mean you can't use that same lawnmower at your house. You're going to run things a little differently. You're going to depreciate things a little differently. You're going to pay yourself a little differently. Um, again, going back to Ray Kroc, you're investing in real estate and you're going to have an asset that's a true asset on your balance sheet. And, depending on how long you set up the mortgage, if you set up on a 10 or 15 or 20-year payoff, you're going to have an opportunity to have a nice piece of property that is worth, you know, either A, what you bought it for, or potentially more when you're retiring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I guess I also feel like I get to use that space, the space I own, all these years too. Um, and that feels good too. It feels like a benefit
Yeah.
ownership, Okay.
Well, it's nice because you're paying yourself for your space rather than, seeing the guy show up, every month to collect the rent check and handing him the
Right.
check going, okay, I'm paying a rent check.
Yeah.
The thing that's wonderful about commercial real estate, especially for long-term wealth creation, is that you are saving in reverse without saving, right? You're paying down that mortgage slow and steady, and some people pay it off fast. I worked with a group, they bought an office condo
Mhm.
and they looked at it and they're like, yeah, I've got it on a 5-year payoff. I want to get it free and clear. I'm going to have my association dues to take care of the exterior maintenance and
Mm-hmm.
common hallway cleaning and all that stuff that you'd have no matter what. But they're looking at it as, after I invest my initial money into the space, I'm not really going to change it every year. I'm going to
Right.
use it. Like anything, you probably need to do a paint and carpet eventually, but they're looking at going, this is going to be great. I'm going to have my own space. And if you think about it over the life of your business, if your business is going to be, if you're going to be in business for 30, maybe 40 years, if you can pay off that real estate and keep paying yourself, the rent into your pocket,
Mhm.
Right.
you're making extra money.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and okay, so I'm also thinking it's like entrepreneurial to really want to own, and
Mhm.
I'm thinking, is that a different mindset? Um,
Yes. Yes. I think you're 100% a different mindset when you're buying a building, you are becoming an entrepreneur in a different way than you are as deciding to go off on your own as your own individual therapist, right? Like leaving one of the big providers to start your own practice, that's a leap of faith. You
mhm.
have to make that leap of faith to start your own practice. You have to get credentialed. You have to do those things. You're now taking your entrepreneurial activity one step farther with the purchase and saying, You know what? I've been successful renting. I've been successful with my practice. I know I can do this. I want to take it to the next level, and I want to own, and I want to create that rent stream that I'm paying, someone else.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start paying myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that theme of ownership, whether it's ownership of the of your time, of your situation, of your space, of how you do things. That really feeds into that is that entrepreneurial spirit, I guess. For
Yeah.
I don't know if that quite is right, but like people who want to do things their own way can, and they are willing to trade a risk or take on
Mm-hmm.
more risk
Yes.
to do so.
Yep.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, like I own quite a bit of real estate. I've got another company called Nokomis Property Management where we own and manage apartment buildings.
Okay.
I have a lot of people look at me and they say, "Why in the world would you do it? Like you're, being a landlord, I can't believe you'd even do it." And
Okay.
I tell people like I'm saving in reverse. I'm not getting rich quick today.
Mm-hmm.
I am saving so that when I am in my 60s and my 70s, I have an income stream that can replace what I'm doing in my day job.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm working, I'm still mowing the lawns. I'm still shoveling the sidewalks. We've grown from a duplex to, multi-unit, apartment buildings, but I'm still actively engaged each and every day. And again, to your question, it becomes a time issue, right? Like I'm sacrificing the short term today for the long term tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've definitely given that concept thought before, as far as what, when we, taking the risk to just start this thing in the first place, taking the pay cut to do that, and to turning it into what it is today and what I hope it can be in the future when it comes to Breezy. It's I don't know, it's a different way to do it. It's not just stocking money away in an IRA or something.
Right.
Exactly. Well, and again, it gets back to purchasing a building. It's a real asset. It's something that is on your balance sheet.
Mm-hmm.
When you're going to buy a new home or look at buying a cabin or whatever it is you're going to want to buy as well. You're looking at your balance sheet and you're going, hey, I own my house, I own my office. I've got value there outside of just being in an S&P 500 index fund in the stock market, right? Like I've got another asset
Mm-hmm.
that is worth something, you know, which is, again, it's the one way to build wealth that you can pass on to your spouse or your children or your grandchildren, eventually to be like, oh, grandma bought this building for her therapy practice, 50 years ago, and we still have it in the family today, and it makes, X amount of money, and we all get a little check because of grandma. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I never thought about it that way, but that's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or it could even be, 50 years, later, and grandma, is no longer there, but the two children are like, wow, grandma's building's worth $1 million now, and we can each take our inheritance and go do what we want with our lives differently, or pay for kids' college, or the cabin, or the dream vacation, whatever it is. It's really, real estate does create generational wealth.
Yep.
If managed and run correctly.
Awesome. Awesome.
That's a nugget.
Yeah, that's a good nugget. That's the quotable on the. That'll be the quotable. That's real cool, Nels. Do you have any success stories of behavioral health practices that have benefited from buying? I know you mentioned one that you're working with. Anything that stands out that's like, hey, these guys grew to X and now they decided to buy their space. Now they're buying a second, or who have you worked with in that space, or share a bit about that quick.
I don't always know if it's, I won't use just behavioral health as the success stories. I think, because it can be practice. It can be the law firm, it can be the
Okay.
dental, it can be the medical, in general.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've seen a lot of people, and one of the things I say that we really, I did this a lot, kind of early on in my career, um, where we put partnerships together, and I look at those partnerships now that are 15 years, 20 years old, and a lot of those doctors, are still sitting in those buildings. They might have retired themselves and passed their clinic on to somebody else. Like, they've made the transition, but they're still in ownership and they're still collecting that dividend
Hmm.
distribution check every quarter. And they're looking at it going, wow, I'm, you know, 20% owner of a $7 million medical office building that's full, and I'm getting paid out, X per quarter, and it's a great supplement to um, my retirement income stream, and created really some cool value that could be passed on. So I think those kind of situations are kind of the true benefit of commercial real estate when it comes down to it. Now you got to make sure you're seeing the patients and paying the bills and staying on top of the building, because you don't want to go the opposite way. But no, I think there's a lot of opportunity to do that.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right.
Yeah. I have a question, Nels, just about what COVID did to the commercial real estate industry, and you had talked about that a little bit before, but I guess the question would be, if I'm ready to take that jump to buy, is this a good time to buy?
So I'll start with your first question of what really happened with COVID. And I don't want to get political in this, but it ultimately ends up getting a little political. When we had the work from home mandate come through,
Mm-hmm.
we had a lot of people work from home for a very significant amount of time, and they got very comfortable working from home. Now, you could make a lot of potential arguments that a lot of people weren't working as hard or putting in as many hours. Some people would say put in more hours working from home because I was juggling more things. But once that flexibility was granted,
Hmm.
it's been really hard to bring people back.
Hmm.
So you saw it with Governor Walz trying to push state workers back into the office. And the complaining that was like, well, we've been working from home. Why do we need to come back in?
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing it with people talking about like downtown Minneapolis, and Target needs to bring its employees back. Like the vitality of our downtown kind of urban cores has been shaken with the work from home. I think if you talk to most employers, they would love to have their employees back in the office. However, the employment market is 3% unemployment right now, 3.5% unemployment. The employee has so much leverage that in order to get good quality people working for them, they have to give a hybrid model of some kind. Now, we are starting to see a shift. We're hearing like Amazon, JP Morgan, um, Microsoft, Governor Walz with the state of Minnesota trying to push people back into the office. I think
Okay.
we are going to see more people return to the office. And I don't know about you, because this would be a very interesting psychology type paper of the benefits and drawbacks of working remote. Like,
Right.
Hmm.
there's a lot of community that happens at work. There's a
Is.
lot of people that a lot of their only interactions in the day come with their coworkers.
Mm-hmm.
Be it the water cooler talk, the hey, what did you do this weekend type talk, that if you're working from home, you're maybe not getting, like the happiness quotient. Am I happier working from home or am I happier being in the office with other people? It'd be a really interesting, paper.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
behavior health wise, like how much benefit could it be? I know my own children didn't benefit from being in school. Like, 100%. I think my kids would have been better off being in school.
Yep.
Yeah.
But because of that shift to being at home, we just saw such a massive shift in how we use commercial real estate, specifically office, that has been definitely a downward pressure, specifically on rental. Now, to follow up on the tail end of your question, the purchase side has remained relatively strong because again, there is so few buildings. Like, just as you guys leave the office today, just look around you as you drive home, and you'll see a lot of office around your office, maybe retail, maybe some industrial, but pretty quickly you're into condominiums, into apartments, into residential, because most of our Twin Cities land isn't being used by office buildings and industrial buildings and retail buildings. It's mainly being used by residential buildings,
Mhm.
be it single family homes, be it multifamily living. It's really, we're geared towards residential because, again, everyone needs a place to live.
Right.
Commercial product, you're bringing a lot of people together. The IDS is 1.1 million square feet of space in 52 vertical stories.
Right.
Mhm.
It's very condensed, it's very defined. Most of the Twin Cities is residential.
Okay. Yeah.
So when you're trying to find those small, office buildings, retail buildings, strip centers, there's just not a lot of that product out there. So they're trying to really understand how, like, that's where the pricing has been maintained, and you don't see as much of a quick drop on the pricing.
Okay. Yeah,
Huh.
that makes sense. What what other challenges are you seeing in the today? Like if you're looking at the challenges of the market today, whether it's Twin Cities, whether it's national or urban, suburban, um, outskirts. Yeah.
So how I would break it down is two functions. I would call it market risk and regulatory risk. On the market risk side of things, we're seeing, interest rates are first and foremost in everyone's mind because that's going to dictate how much you're buying, what you're spending on buying a building, and what it also dictates what you're spending on improvements, because if you're borrowing money to do improvements or buy a building, that interest rate is huge.
Mhm.
On the regulatory side of things, it's the uncertainty around what government programs or government initiatives are going to come through. Like, are we going to have enough police? Are we going to have public safety? Are we going to have parking? Are we going to have, is the road going to be ripped up in front of my building that I thought was going to be here is now gone? So, not to pick on Uptown, but, I'm going to pick on Uptown in this moment. In Uptown Minneapolis, I'm sorry, I should probably clarify that for, people that are probably not in the Twin Cities area. We had Hennepin Avenue, which is the main thoroughfare in Uptown, be ripped up all of last year. It gets really hard to get to a building if you can't drive down the street.
Mhm.
Now the other half of Uptown is being ripped up. And again, it's getting really hard to get into Uptown if you can't drive down the street.
Mhm.
And if you had just bought the building or just moved your practice into a building on Hennepin Avenue and you didn't realize that was coming, that's a huge disruptor to your business that you did not plan on. And now you've got people saying, I don't want to come to your office. It's just too much work.
Yep.
You know, that's a regulatory risk that you didn't really foresee because you didn't know that they were going to rip the whole street apart. You
Yeah.
know, you didn't foresee that they were going to say, "Hey, we're not going to allow parking on Hennepin anymore because we're going to put bus rapid transit down the street." You know, have your people find a parking spot somewhere else.
Yeah.
So,
Use.
market risk and regulatory risks, two different things that have major impacts on what you're doing.
Okay. Yeah. We had a customer that had to switch locations or made the decision to switch locations. I don't know their exact situation, but it was because of that they were just constantly having problems. People couldn't find parking. Everything was real tight, and then just kind of just the mess of the construction. Heck, I tried going to a concert there, and it was a pain in the backside just to get there, just to go see something at the I forgot what venue it was, the Uptowner or something like that. Just a year and a half ago. So it's real, yeah. And now they're doing it's happening on the other side or a little further down. So I can only imagine
Yep.
what's going on there now still.
So, again, it gets back to that market risk, interest rates, insurance costs, you know, you know,
Are these all
if you're
things?
buying the building, how much snow are you going to get versus,
Yeah.
I'm
So
sorry, after you.
yeah, sorry to interrupt, but like, are these all things? This is this is the broker's job to think about these things and to bring them to
Yes.
their clients, their clients' attention. So like, okay, is like catching like, hey, we should maybe check to see what kind of building plans are for your main thoroughfare here if you're on a bigger one or something. Is that all part of your bailiwick?
Yeah, your commercial real estate broker should be helping you understand what's going on in your specific geographic area. So
Okay.
as you're looking at, hey, I want to move my office to St. Louis Park. Okay, understanding that Highway 7 right now is kind of a backlog because 394, the sane lane has been shut down. We've got a lot of traffic going, on those roads, and people are trying to find different, means of travel.
Mm-hmm.
So just be aware, Highway 7 gets to be pretty clogged in the morning and in the afternoons.
Mm-hmm.
How does that affect your practice? Hey, this building is zoned, you know, office density 1. Does that fit with the medical practice that you have?
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to get a conditional use permit, or are we okay?
Right.
The hardest thing is no broker knows that the city is going to rip the road apart in 5 years, right? Like,
Right.
you just don't know. But you should be looking at least within the next year to 2 years of, hey, is there anything out there I should be aware of? Is there any major construction going on? Is there anything happening that I can help, mitigate my risks on? Interest rates, a lot of people ask me about interest rates, and frankly, I don't think interest rates are coming down. I just don't think that the 10-year, treasury, which is most of what commercial real estate is based upon, is going to change. Now, it might, but I wouldn't be buying a building with the hope that we're going to get back to 4.5% to 4% interest rates. I would buy the building with the understanding that you're probably at 6.5% to 7.5% for the foreseeable future. And in all honesty, it might go up if inflation happens, and we've got to tamper down inflation if the Fed needs to keep raising the Fed fund rate. Mm-hmm. So be aware that we're not. I can't predict a lower interest rate environment. It's a benefit, but I can't predict it. I'd predict a higher one if you asked me today than a lower one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One of the things I'm hearing you say, Nels, is the importance, and this goes a little bit back to when you're talking about some of the more things happening outside of the building, is the importance of having someone local too who knows their market very well. And I think just in our industry, we're fighting for independent behavioral health providers. That local concept definitely rings true here as well. Kind of like how we started things off. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely would say find someone locally to help you out. Local architect, local contractor, local attorney, local broker, you know, I even say local, CPA, because they're going to know the ins and outs of Minnesota law probably better than,
Mhm.
some guy that you're sending your stuff to in California.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I think people do like to shop locally at the end of the day because they like knowing that their services are being purveyed by someone that's in the community with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And just to reiterate again, and your job as a broker is to kind of know and help know a lot of these people, and if not know, guide, or at least know who to ask the question to if you need to go ask the question.
Yeah, correct. And help guide through the process because it really is guiding the process. It's very much a step by step, methodical process to getting the correct deal done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had a mentor of mine that used to say, you do the simple steps correctly and everything will work out. So you got to be consistent and correct on the simple steps. And the simple steps make the big project. Kind of getting back to what we started, when we, kind of first started talking about like that Eagle project you did.
Oh yeah.
You
Yep.
know, you don't start with the big grand idea and just jump in and go build it, right? You start with get a plan, get
Yep.
your materials, figure out your time. It's all those little details that make the big project to make the big project successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks. This has been incredibly insightful. I really appreciate your time
Yeah,
today.
thank you.
This is just talking about renting and buying and office space, and I think you've brought to light a lot of very important questions and things to consider for our listeners. So, really appreciate the conversation.
Very much, Nils. This was great. Yeah.
No, this has been really fun. This is the first time I've ever done this, so this has been really, really a lot of fun.
Okay, well, you'll be. It's only up from here.
I
hope for Nels,
yeah,
sure.
Okay. Good.
Well, before we go, any closing thoughts, final advice? Can we squeeze one more nugget out of you? What do you? Anything?
I think my closing thought for you really is twofold. Number one, get a professional to help you with your space. You're gonna have a better outcome. You're gonna get a better deal, and you're gonna end up having just a situation that makes you feel much more comfortable and confident in what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Number two, make sure you get out to the state fair and find those cheese curds or Prono Pup and enjoy what is Minnesota's greatest treasure.
Oh, turkey legs. I love the turkey legs.
Turkey legs. Yeah. Turkey to go. Wonderful booth right over by the barns.
Barns. Yep.
And the DNR building.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
Oh, good.
Well, before we go, we do like to ask one more kind of closing question. Although I might know what you've been thinking about lately because I think it's what you're doing this weekend. But feel free to pick something else. But we always like to ask what you've been thinking about lately. What's been just kind of something on your mind rolling through there?
Well, from a professional standpoint, work related, it's really the interest rates. It's the regulatory environment. It's the public safety aspect. It's this could probably be a whole episode for you guys. Just having a mental health purveyor, just talking through how you deal with the conflict of the right versus the left and politics. But a lot of thought just around how is that going to impact economy and business. More on a personal note. It 100% is. I am just looking forward to the state fair. I am. I've been waiting for it for about 11 and a half months, and I'm excited. I'm excited to get back out there and walk the booths and find the food and get over to the dairy building and get a raspberry malt maybe, and maybe get some Tom Thumb mini donuts.
Yeah. The cookies.
Oh, man.
The cookies, a gizmo, maybe a cinnamon roll. Got to go walk through that, who doesn't love to walk through the grandstand and see all those products that you probably don't need in your house?
Yes. Yep.
Right.
But to think about it and be like, oh, that sounds pretty good.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we'll have to figure out when this airs. You might have to give us an update. I can't remember when we're planning to air this episode. So if you get any updates, if you see something that we have to get at the grandstand,
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah, let us know.
Well, come join. What is it like on average? 150? Was it between 100 to 150,000 people show up to State Fair each day?
It's something insane like that. Yeah.
It's like or maybe that's too many. Hang on, I might just have to Google this as we're sitting here. Average attendance, Minnesota State Fair.
So I did notice he's still Googling and not using ChatGPT.
Yeah, I did notice that too. That's he's more he's probably about your age.
Yeah,
Do you think he's a little bit older than that or
there.
something? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I take that.
See,
I'm 50, so
oh yeah, right in between. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so average attendance is 2 million people.
Jeez.
Over 12.
So what's 2 million divided by 12 days? 166,000 per day.
That's wild. Go Minnesota.
Yeah.
Go State Fair. We love it.
It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
Just
a lot of
logistics
shoes
behind that too. Well,
great.
Yeah, a lot of shoes.
There's a lot of shoes.
Yeah.
But how, it's just, I don't know. I love it, guys. I gotta tell you, and I'm known as that guy that loves the State Fair. So I've already had friends and colleagues reaching out, being like, "You ready?" And I'm like,
Oh, jeez. Oh,
yeah.
great. Oh,
Well, how about you, Dad? Though, what have you been thinking? If it's not the State Fair now,
it's not quite the state. I just had my first Amoroso bun in years. Amoroso buns come from Amoroso bread comes from Philly, and they make the cheesesteaks out of them. And my dear son got some special ordered, through a local.
there's Tono's
yeah,
cheesesteaks and pizza here, at least in Minnesota.
We were camping this past weekend, and we had a Philly cheesesteak like I haven't had for 20 years. It was delicious.
Yep.
I'll tell you.
"Oh my gosh, that sounds good."
Yeah. And then to top it off,
Mm.
we had cookies, chocolate chip cookies. One of the buddies makes them. I special requested them again this year. He made a dozen each day.
A dozen per day
for us to have.
And we think the key is double the butter.
At least double the butter. That's what I'm guessing. So those are my thoughts.
That is wonderful.
Yeah, that was a real cheesesteak. Props to my buddy Shane. He makes the cheese. He made that happen, and the cookies too.
Yeah.
And then he helped me catch what I've been thinking about. And so this last weekend it was the kind of the guys trip. We head up to Vermilion with I got a high school buddy, a college buddy, a later in life buddy. And my dad goes, my buddy's dad goes. So it's just kind of this group of people that gets together a year and just kind of goes and slacks off and tries to fish a little bit up in northern Minnesota.
Yeah.
And so I managed to catch a decent walleye, which is pretty good. They're kind of hard to get, and a few more that we were able to keep. But I caught a 24-inch walleye while I was there, and that was pretty fun to bring in. So
that's awesome. Did you walk the Vermilion Gorge? I was just up in that same area, and I went on a hike in the Vermilion Gorge.
No, haven't been there. What side of the lake is that on?
It's down on the what would that be? The southeastern end of Voyager National Park.
Okay.
So it's way down on the south kind of end of it.
Okay, getting into the Boundary Waters area and everything.
Yeah,
on the south side. But okay, we're kind of the northwest corner ish. If you could find a corner on Vermilion. We're just outside of Cook a little ways, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I was up in Orr.
Okay, I'll be there in a few weeks for my brother-in-law or my future brother-in-law's bachelor party.
Yeah.
Got a cabin rented in Orr on Pelican Lake there.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Beautiful area.
It is. I love it up there. It is gorgeous. All right.
Great.
So that's it for this episode of the Right Tack. Make sure to follow along, and we'll call it from there. So if you like what you're hearing, please share it, follow us, like us, whatever button you've got to smash, go do that, and take us with you on your phone. And if you want to get a hold of Nels, we will definitely have his contact info and everything else. And so get a broker if you're looking into commercial real estate, or if you're looking at leasing. Make sure to have people who know what those things are to do it. So until next time, I'm Paul Jonas.
And I'm Jim Jonas.
Keep your eyes on the horizon.